Hello and welcome to this edition of In Conversation. Now, we're about to head into Black Friday and that key e-commerce period ahead of the Christmas holidays. I'm joined by Sarah Barker. She's our head of Biddable Media, she's worked a number of Black Fridays and she's going to give you her best tips to get it right this Black Friday. Okay, so we're about to hit the Black Friday period, which is kind of the start of the main promotional period now for a lot of e-com and a lot of retail brands. Black Friday seems to have brought that period forward even more than it used to be. And there's obviously a lot of pressure on these retailers and these e-commerce brands to get it right. So what, in your experience, are the main difficulties that a lot of brands have in terms of getting that right?
I would say, in my experience, there's kind of two main difficulties that are really standing out to me. The first one is just the real obvious fact that it's so much more competitive over Black Friday, and it's particularly kind of impactful across paid channels, particularly those that use an auction. So there's so many more bidders within that auction, and CPCs, in my experience, are likely to hike quite a lot. You end up paying a lot more across an array of channels, from PPC to Facebook, etc. But the main area that I do see the problem is around PPC brand. When people are perhaps paying more for their own branded terms during this point in time. And if people aren't monitoring it super closely, what they'll tend to find is maybe their average position on those core terms starts to drop, and competitors really start to kind of sneak in there and take away some of that traffic and revenue. So it's just something that people really need to be aware of, even though it sounds relatively simple. And then I guess with that kind of competition type area, people also kind of have to deal with the fact that it's going to be much harder to stand out during Black Friday. Normally, if you kind of have a 50% discount, 40% discount, whatever it might be, that's your real differentiator. Like, I'm doing a promo, come buy from me. But at this point in time, I'd be very surprised if a retail brand wasn't doing a promo. So you've just got to be a little bit smarter and think of new innovative ways to get your brand out there. Maybe it's something on Facebook that's kind of really innovative, eye-catching, creative, or kind of slightly different ways of wording kind of your PPC messaging or that type of thing. And then I guess with that, it's not only kind of standing out against the competition, but for a lot of brands that we work with, they also have a lot of resellers. So it's managing that kind of relationship with resellers as well, because what you'll tend to find is they'll be able to discount products way more than kind of the brand can, going down to 70, 80% off, and they're less afraid to use a word like cheap, discount, because they're not so worried about any negative connotations with the brand. So you just have to factor that in, I guess, and make sure that you're monitoring competition throughout the period, utilising kind of auction insights or any kind of third-party kind of audience monitoring tools, competition monitoring tools, and just kind of make sure you're reacting to that.
Okay, and I suppose as well, you've got that difficulty of you've got the increased competition, you've got the increased cost pressure. At the same time, you're putting pressure on margin because you're discounting.
Absolutely. I guess, that was probably the second difficulty that I was going to point out, in terms of it's not a great time, I guess, for retailers to really be pushing their budget into, because this is the time when their profits are really going to be squeezed given those discounts. But it's just kind of one of those things that we have to play along with, and the opportunity for revenue is there. You just have to be mindful of things like your profit margin, or even things like returns rates, because what we do typically find is a lot of people are likely to return products more around the Black Friday period if they're just kind of buying in bulk, different sizes or whatever it might be, to take kind of advantage of those discounts and return it at a later date.
Okay, so each year we tend to see that there are brands that you say, yes, they're getting it right with their strategy, and there are brands that you say they've probably not got that, then they're probably not on the money with that approach. But so in your experience, what's kind of the most important aspects that you need to be factoring into that strategy, and I suppose what are the biggest mistakes that you need to be mindful of avoiding?
I guess one of the main things that you really need to do, where brands are really getting it right, is when they just go back to basics a little bit, and from the outset they just really think, what am I trying to achieve? What are my main KPIs? And when I say KPIs here, it's really kind of understanding them in relation to your overall business goals. So again, going back to things like margin and profitability, because on the flip side, one of the biggest mistakes that we see people do is just work with channels completely in silo, and all they're pushing for is just maximum revenue, each out for their own within each of those channels. And as a result, you become quite blindsided to that overall goal that you're actually trying to achieve. With this kind of approach, you're probably going to end up pushing all of your money into PPC brand because that's where you see kind of the biggest return, and perhaps neglecting some of those other channels that are really contributing towards that overall user journey. So really keeping an idea of margin and how each channel contributes to that overall profitability is kind of super key to have. I guess if we broke that down on a channel by channel basis, you could look at something like PPC shopping campaigns. So here you may be a kind of a retailer who sells iPhones and you sell iPhone cases. If I'm just pushing for kind of volume, maybe my iPhone cases are actually starting to stack up because everyone wants to buy them in the sale, whereas potentially I've got less of a discount on my iPhones, but at the end of the day, that's what's generating me the margin. So I really need to bear that in mind. Or maybe looking at the Facebook side of things, there's Facebook remarketing and Facebook prospecting. Remarketing is where you're going to see a lot of the revenue happening, but actually, given that it's Black Friday and a lot of those people have probably done research before Black Friday, are they actually driving any kind of incremental sales, or would those people have just kind of purchased anyway? So perhaps that budget is a little bit better spent in kind of the prospecting area. So just understanding that bigger picture is where people are really going to make those overall gains, I guess. And then just looking at probably some of the more simpler mistakes that we've seen people do quite a lot of, particularly over last Black Friday, just sloppy ads. It's people kind of getting typos in there, ads going out at the wrong time. I think last year we saw a few instances of Cyber Monday ads going out on the Friday and over the weekend where maybe scheduling just wasn't done properly. And I think this is just a product of kind of overcomplication and overwhelming Google and Facebook with too many different ad formats and variations. So brands just really need to keep it simple, just kind of get those core assets that are really key to them. Maybe do few different variations, a shorter form video, longer form video, mix them up into a carousel, a collection, but it's just slight tweaks and variations on the same thing, and it makes your overall user journey much more kind of aligned, and it just kind of reduces that margin for error, I guess, overall.
I think another point as well to mention is, and we maybe not so much recent years, but certainly in the past, just making sure that your server can handle the traffic load. You're paying to send this traffic, and the system can't handle it. Some really interesting points. So one of the things you mentioned earlier was about having the creative that stands out. How distinctive does your Black Friday campaign, or I suppose any seasonal campaign, really need to be from just your general e-commerce marketing strategy and promotional strategy? Does it need to be something very distinct, very Black Friday focused, or can it run kind of alongside your other campaigns?
I guess I'm probably going to give you a bit of a fluffy answer here. In some ways it's the same, and in some ways it's different. I kind of like to use the analogy that it's like the Champions League within a football season, where the general rules that you play into are pretty much the same, but you just have to kind of adapt your tactics a little bit because the competition is going to be much more fierce. And I guess the margin for error if you make a mistake is probably going to be a lot more severe and cost you a little bit more than it would kind of for the rest of the year. So I think it's really important compared to a normal promotion that you really have that full thought out plan going from probably the weeks running up to Black Friday to the weeks after Black Friday, because unlike any other promotion or event that you're running, users know exactly when it's going to happen and they're expecting it to happen. So you really have to kind of build your audience into that plan. So for example, in the run up to Black Friday, start to think about prospecting activity. YouTube, for example, is a really good one. Instagram or Facebook stories to start building out those new audiences. Then as it kind of gets into the Black Friday period itself, again, think about how you can remarket back to those users that you kind of brought in before. And one thing that I do think is super important to understand during the Black Friday period itself is who are kind of your loyal user base that are kind of high value and likely to purchase from you a lot. And potentially who are people who are more of those promiscuous Black Friday shoppers who are potentially just going to come in, kind of get that deal and never come back to you again. So you may want to value those within Black Friday slightly differently. But then I guess when you kind of extend beyond the Black Friday period, there's your opportunity to actually convert those promiscuous shoppers, I guess, into more long-term shoppers by kind of remarketing back to them again with some real high quality, your best kind of branded content and material. So it's more of a long game, I guess, than some of the kind of shorter promos through the year.
Okay. Black Friday seems to have become a bit of a love-hate thing for a lot of retailers.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of retailers say we don't want anything to do with it, either because it's the pressure on the margin, or they see scenes on the TV of what goes on in some supermarkets, and they say we don't want to be involved with that. But is that a right approach, or are we in a position where consumers are now expecting Black Friday, and they're expecting deals, and they're expecting big deals? Is it right that retailers say this is nothing that we want to be a part of? Are they missing out, or?
Yeah, I'd say it depends who you are. If you are like a real high-end luxury brand, then potentially you don't need Black Friday, and the damage it could do to your brand may be more harmful than good if you don't kind of want to get involved in the Black Friday sales, etc. But I would say for the most part, consumers will be expecting deals over Black Friday, and if they're going through to your website and you're not offering any kind of deal at all, then you're probably going to miss out. What I would say is a trend that I noticed last year compared to the year before, just from kind of having worked over a few Black Fridays now, is that people didn't go in with the promos quite as early as they did the year before. So we were starting to notice it over a week before. People kind of maybe just doing intro promos or just going in with the full Black Friday promo from the start of the week. Whereas now people were maybe going for the Thursday or launching on the Friday, but they are kind of keeping that term a little bit shorter to Black Friday, particularly when you consider you've got the big Christmas promos in the months afterwards. So it's just about striking that right balance. But I think, if you completely discounted Black Friday, then you may get some sorry numbers over the Q4 period.
In that situation, if you are saying, Black Friday is something we're not wanting to be involved with, is the advice there just to actually pull back on some of your biddable strategy potentially, and essentially minimise those costs during a period where everyone else is going to be being much more aggressive?
Yeah, I'd say if everybody within your kind of peer set or like competition is doing a promo and you're not, you're probably going to see a pretty big dent to your conversion rates over that period of time. So I would definitely recommend to pull back. Okay,
so final question. If you were to give one takeaway message to e-com brands, e-com marketers out there when it comes to Black Friday, or we can talk about Cyber Monday as well, another promotion period, what would be your big takeaway message in terms of what they need to be getting right with their approach?
I would say keep it relatively simple. So you should be able to go into Black Friday, I guess, with almost like a mission statement, just be able to summarize in a few sentences what are you trying to achieve through this activity and through Black Friday, and then that should filter down into each of your individual channels, but they're ultimately working towards the same goal, and it doesn't become very, very bitty, because you have to be quite reactive, I guess, overall during Black Friday, and you don't want each channel kind of doing something that it might look like it's good for them, but it isn't great to achieve that overall goal. So everyone from your e-com director to your SEO manager in-house to kind of a PPC grad agency side, everyone should know that overall mission statement and be kind of working towards that goal.
Sound advice. Lots of things to cover there. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us. Thank you for joining us on this edition of In Conversation. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We've got more over on the blog as well. So thank you for watching.